rev limiter at like 61, so well, I say 61, like 60, 6,500, somewhere in there. But it's running good. It's pulling really hard. It is not breaking up at all. So this video will pick back up at the track hopefully on Sunday, as long as the weather holds out. All right, we're here, but it is very cold. It's in the 40s. It's not supposed to get out of the 40s. The car should like it, so we'll see what happens. I drove the car around the parking lot to warm it up. Right now they're running the quick 16, and then they're gonna call up test and tune. But yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, I am all strapped in, ready to go. I'm in the staging lanes. There's quite a line in front of me. Off the trailer, I've got it ramped my normal 13 to 14. So we'll see what happens. I may be able to run the 9 off the trailer. That'd be pretty cool. Don't think it's gonna happen, but it is pretty cold outside, so the car should be making a little bit more power than it usually does. So we'll see what happens. Stay tuned.
At 129.87.
All right, so a little run recap. I ended up deep staging. I turned my 2-step back up to 3,800 and forgot to turn my bump down, so I bumped through the light. I did a 1.6 60 foot spinning a little because it was too much for the track. The track was really cold. Did a 1.6 60 foot, a 6.8 at 100 in the 8th, and a 10.7 at 129 in the quarter. But I'm still having issues, guys. I don't know what's going on with the car. I'm actually back at the house. The car's back up. It blew the pump seal, the torque converter seal out, which is very frustrating. So I've got it jacked up. I'm gonna yank the transmission out. I have another pump. I'm not 100% positive, but I broke the input shaft, and I think when I did, the vibration of the torque converter after the input shaft broke may have walked the seal out, and I didn't notice. And it blew out. Luckily, it didn't roll the track down. Of course, it did the same thing it was doing before it blew out on the return road, which is fantastic. So I'm back at the house. I've got it jacked up. Like I said on that run, the car made 14 pounds, or actually made about 15 pounds, 15-ish pounds The car's down on power. I don't know what's going on. It's got new plugs in it. All the plugs look fine. I'm not down on any cylinders or anything. And the car will not rev past 6,500. I don't know what's going on with it. It doesn't break up. It doesn't pop and bang or anything like that. It just hits 6,500 like it hits a wall, almost like it's floating the valves, which it shouldn't be because it's got triple valve springs in it that are designed, or not designed, but the specs that this cam calls for. But talking to my dad on the phone, I used to run his old solid flat tappet cam with his valve springs. I used to turn this thing 7,500 RPM all day. It did it no problem. So I'm thinking there's a valve spring issue, I think. So this week I'm probably going to be putting his old valve springs back on these heads and seeing what they do. Because I'm at a loss at this point. I don't know what the problem is. But I used to turn it to 7,500. Now I can only get it to turn to 6,500. And it's been like that ever since I put this cam in. So I'm going to start with the springs. I'm going to put his old springs back in. Take these springs back out, which were also his springs that he got for his motor, but he couldn't use them. They just happened to be the seat pressure and stuff that I needed. But I'm going to switch back to the old springs more than likely and see what happens. It's definitely not going to hurt anything, so it's worth a shot to at least try it and see what happens. But I believe I have a valve control issue, and I think that's why the RPM's falling off, but that doesn't explain why it seems so far down on power. When I made the 139 mile an hour pass, it was on 14 psi. Now this last run, it didn't data log, of course. But I held to try and see what it was going to do. I let it run up to 6,500 and let it sit there for a second, and it wouldn't go any higher. So that killed some of my mile per hour, I'm sure, because I was probably on 6,500 in first gear and second gear for a second. So 2 seconds total, which is a lot. Kills a lot of mile an hour because that's the whole time it's sitting at 6,500. The car's not accelerating anymore. But I wanted to look at the tune and see what the tune was going to say. Which of course didn't tell me anything because it didn't data log. But it's not breaking up, it's not popping, it's not backfiring, it's not doing anything like that. It just runs out of breath at 6,500, which leads me to believe I have a valve train control issue. And then it still has a little bit of a tick in it, and I've pulled all the lifters out. I've checked all the, when the motor was out, I checked all of the bearings in it. I've checked all that stuff. I'm almost wondering if it's not the springs. They're triple valve springs with 160 seat, but I'm almost wondering if they ramp too fast, if the pressure's coming in too quick and the open pressure's too high. And it's giving me some valve control issues. I don't know for sure if that's what it is, but like I said, I'm going to switch back to the other valve springs. It's not going to hurt anything. It just won't rev out if that's the problem. And if those valve springs don't work, it's just not going to rev out. I'll have valve float. If they do work, then we'll know the valve springs were probably the issue. But I'm going to get the yanking this transmission out. I will get back to y'all once it's out. I'm not going to bore y'all with removing it because y'all have seen me remove the transmission out of this car way too many times. But we'll get it yanked out and take a look at the seal and see if the seal was walked out, see if I blew the pump off, see what it is. All I know right now for sure is there's oil coming out of the bell housing. Other than that, I don't know what it's coming from. So let's get this thing yanked out. So the seal is not blown out, and it doesn't look like there's any, other than when I pulled the torque converter out, there's no oil running down right here, but the oil's definitely coming out from inside the bell housing. So I almost, it actually pushed the pump off. It stripped that. Yep. Okay, well, looks like I'm gonna be drilling and tapping. Great. Well, that's the issue. So I'll get this pump yanked off, do what I gotta do, and get it back together. So stay tuned. All right, so this is what I've got. This is what I'm doing. These are all the same thread. There's just a couple of different bolts. That's the same bolts as these. This one, and this one are all exactly the same. This is still a 9/16. It's a little different than these are two Allen keys, but they're all the same exact thread. So what I did was I just drilled out the pump holes, made them a little bit bigger, drilled and tapped all the holes. So it's going from this little bitty little thing, which I can only assume from taking the pump in and out, in and out, in and out so many times. It actually, you can see, actually, like this one, that was wrapped around one of these bolts. It literally just pulled the threads out of the housing, which I have another housing right there. So if this happens again, everything from this one's going to go in that one, but I want to clean that one up and get it nice, because it is significantly dirtier than this one. Not that this one's real clean, but it is significantly dirtier. So I'd like to get that one cleaned up, looking like this one, before I put it in. But essentially, I went from this size bolt to this size bolt. So it's a, let me find the okay, here you go. So there's some of the threads still left on the end of that bolt. I mean, it literally, I have already pulled some of them off, but it just pulled the threads out of the housing. So they are 3/8 by 16. So these are all 3/8 by 16. So, and I think these are 5/16. So just went a little bit bigger. I thought about maybe buying some helicoils and helicoiling all the bolt holes and putting these back in, but I mean, what's it gonna hurt to go to a bigger bolt? So I'm gonna put it all back together and it should be fixed. So we'll see what happens. All right, well, I got home about 2 o'clock ish. It is now 5 o'clock. I've been done for about 30 or 45 minutes. I just had to let the car down. The car's back down on the trailer. It's running. I've already put it through all the gears. Everything's working like it's supposed to. So this week I'll be changing the valve springs, and next weekend I'll only be running the 8th, but we'll be able to see if it's winding up and running like it's supposed to, and seeing what it does. But it's supposed to be cold tonight, so I'm gonna let it sit here and idle and get up the temperature, and then I'm gonna put a blanket over the motor, and I have a electric heater that I'm gonna plug in the engine bay to keep it warm, so to keep it from freezing up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.